Well, you see, there are reports of a pair of Manticore that are robbing people on the road. Most recently, they hit a shipment of mine that was being sent to the next town over. That's where you all come in. I'd like you to go and deal with this problem.
Hello, and welcome to Tuna's Tales. This week on Pondering Monsters, we'll be covering the Manticore, but not just any Manticore. We're going to be modifying them a little bit. Specifically, I'll be covering how to turn a plain stat block into an action-oriented stat block. Action-oriented design is a concept I first saw covered by Matt Colville of MCDM in his video on the subject, which I'll provide a link to in the description below. In short, though, it involves taking a monster and giving them some special abilities that they wouldn't normally have, so that you can run lower CR creatures or a single creature against a whole party and still have it be interesting or challenging for them. For this, I'll be using the Manticore stat block as is, with one slight exception. Normally their intelligence score is a 7, but I'll be playing a little fast and loose with that fact. To be clear, I'm not changing the value of their int score, but I'll be saying that they are attempting to do something that a creature with a low intelligence might not be able to do normally. With all that out of the way, though, let's see what these Manticore are up to and figure out what we need to do to make them a challenge. As you all set out, it doesn't take long for you to reach the spot on the road where the reports of the attacks came from. With your decoy shipment of goods in tow, you slow your pace and keep your eyes peeled. Right now, it's only a matter of time. For this encounter, we're going to be doing a fairly normal combat. We'll have 2 Manticores for a 5th level party of 5, and the Manticore will be trying to ambush the party. If the party keeps their eyes open, then they can avoid starting combat surprised. The Manticore in question here have paired up because they want to start a thieves guild, and they're robbing merchant shipments to gather funds and supplies, but have gotten rather overconfident as of late. As a result, they attacked one too many shipments and have now drawn the attention of someone who feels that hiring the party is the best way to deal with them. Now, 2 Manticore for a 5-person 5th level party is typically an easy encounter if we use the CR calculations as a starting point. In reality, depending on how well prepared and equipped the party is, this could be closer to a medium encounter. Other factors include party composition here, and if they have any magic items on them that can boost their power. This is why we're going to be looking at turning these Manticore into some action-oriented monsters. Using this, we should be able to provide a varying degree of challenge for pretty much any party. And that's basically the core of this encounter. So let's start asking some questions and looking at what changes we're going to be making to these creatures. We really only have one main question here that we should have to worry about, as everything else seems pretty straightforward. And that question is, what is an action-oriented monster? Understanding this concept is key to making sure the encounter runs smoothly, so if you haven't seen Matt Colville's video on it before, I highly recommend checking it out. I've linked it in the description below, and he goes much more in depth on it than I intend to here. Afterwards, you should have a good starting point if you are completely unfamiliar with the concept. If you are already familiar with it though, then we can just continue on. So, just what is an action-oriented monster? Matt describes this in much more detail than I plan to in this video, but the way that I tend to think of it is it's a monster with additional abilities that allows you to challenge the party without making the fight grind on to, I hit it, it hits you, I hit it again, over and over. To achieve this, we need to take a monster and give it more actions that it can choose from, and if we want, we can give them what Matt refers to as villain actions, which are basically legendary actions that tell a bit of a story or fit a narrative within the combat. To really understand where this is going, I think we just need to get into it and see how this process works. So, let's do just that. To start, we have the Manticore stat block, and as it is, 2 of them could probably hold their own against a 5th level party. But if the party is more powerful because of magic items they have, or if they've prepared to fight the Manticores, or we just want to scale this up for higher levels, then we need to give this creature something more. So let's start with some of those villain actions. These are intended to be used once per round after someone's turn, and in the order that we create them. The first action is used on round 1, the second on round 2, etc. They also scale in effect as the fight goes on, so that by the 3rd round, when the Manticore is looking pretty rough or starting to, then it's acting more like a wild animal. Kicking this off, we have a bite and throw ability, and, like the name implies, the Manticore bites someone next to it and throws them 10 feet in any direction, knocking them prone. This is meant to give the Manticore some space if it's getting surrounded early on. For the second round, we have a bear hug. The Manticore uses 2 claw attacks, and if both of them hit the same target, then it immediately flies 30 feet straight up with the target and drops them, causing them to take 3d6 fall damage. This would trigger attacks of opportunity on the Manticore and could shift combat because it may knock a character unconscious. However, I say that's a good thing here because it only happens once and shows the party that things could be pretty dire if they aren't careful. Finally, in the third round, we have a spike spray. As a last-ditch effort, the Manticore starts to spin its tail around like a helicopter blade and shoot its tail spikes out at every creature within 30 feet of it. Each creature in a 30-foot radius needs to make a DC 15 Dex save and take the Manticore's tail spike damage on a failure or half on a success. After that, the Manticore should be close to defeat, but if it's not, and you want to keep challenging your party, then start again with the round 1 ability. Now, villain actions aren't the only thing we can do here. I mentioned giving it other things it could do as a potential reaction. Point of clarification here, I'm not saying to give it more reactions per round, just more options that can trigger a reaction or that it can choose to use with its reaction. For this, I came up with 2 additional options. The first one is a pinning shot. If someone provokes an attack of opportunity from the Manticore, then it can use its tail spike action to attack them. If the spike hits and the target fails a DC 13 Dex save, then they're pinned in place for 1 round and can't move, as well as taking the damage from the spike. If they succeed, they take the damage but aren't pinned. Now, technically the Manticore would have disadvantage on this as it is making a ranged attack while within 5 feet of at least one opponent. However, since there is a fairly low Dex save involved for the effect of not being able to move, then I'd waive the disadvantage here. If you don't like that though, then feel free to do it with disadvantage, but consider dropping the save to be pinned. If the attack still hits, even with disadvantage, then just say the target is pinned. The second reaction option here is a spike shot. If someone attacks the Manticore with a ranged attack, then it can take a return shot with its tail spike. Basically, the Manticore gets a free use of its tail spike action for just being attacked at range. Adding in these reactions as well as the previously mentioned villain actions should help you in many different scenarios and keep your party on your toes like we like to do here. With a quick look at how to design a Manticore to be action-oriented, as well as looking at what the concept of action-oriented design is out of the way, we can now start to put this all together. As you all look around for any signs of an ambush, one of you happens to notice the cat-like form before the others, as 2 large Manticores leap down at you from the trees. Roll initiative. With that, our characters are now in combat, and we can show the party just what they're in for. First round. Let's say the Manticores are split on either side of the party, both on the map and in initiative order. One of the creatures goes before them, Manticore A, and one after them, Manticore B. Manticore A will say is our action-oriented one, and B is just going to be a plain normal Manticore. A takes its turn as normal, and then the party goes. Someone gets in close to Manticore A, and at the end of their turn, the Manticore uses the bite and throw villain action. The party sees something they weren't expecting, and now the stakes are immediately raised. After the party finishes, Manticore B takes its turn as normal. Round 2. Manticore A is not near anyone and is feeling confident, so it rushes into the group and attacks. This will cause a couple things to happen. Any squishy casters that happen to be within 5 feet of the Manticore will probably try to move away, triggering one of its reactions that we created. This lets the Manticore decide if it wants to pin the caster and prevent them from moving, or to just take a normal hit at it. If no one does move away, then it'll just use its bear hug ability on someone at the end of their turn. Party finishes out their go, and Manticore B attacks. Round 3 starts, and depending on how combat-oriented your players are, they will most likely have been focusing on this really aggressive Manticore A. If that's the case, then Manticore A isn't looking too hot right now and might be considering trying to escape. It could take the disengage action and start to run, but that would be its turn. If the party gives chase and surrounds it on the ground, then it can use its spike spray to try and knock someone down to give it some more breathing room. By this point, we should have a good view of who is most likely to come out of this combat alive, the Manticores or the party. We of course want the party to make it, but we also want them to really earn it, so if you go a little hard in the beginning, that's okay. And if you feel like they haven't earned it yet, then feel free to go a little harder if that fits the tone of your game. After all is said and done, if the party survives, they can look around to find the stolen goods, which aren't too far away and are maybe scattered around a shallow cave in the woods. They can grab anything they want as proof of victory and return to collect their reward. A decent reward for this, by the way, could be somewhere around 250 gold, which I got from looking at the individual treasure table from the Dungeon Master's Guide and just rolling for the highest option available for the CR6 encounter. If you feel this isn't enough for what you just put your party through, though, then by all means go higher. Your party will have earned it, I'm sure. In the meantime, let's talk about how to make this more difficult for higher levels. We have more options for scaling this encounter than we usually do by this point in the video. As you may have noticed, only one of the Manticores was action-oriented, so if you want it to be harder, then come up with some action-oriented stuff for the second Manticore to use as well. If that isn't enough, then you can always come up with more devastating options for the villain actions. You can also give them more than 3 villain actions that they can use if the combat looks like it's going to be going for longer than 3 rounds. Or you could make it so that at certain hit point thresholds the Manticore gets to interrupt combat and use one of the villain actions. End of the day, and as usual here, have some fun with it. This is your chance to design something special to challenge your party that they either haven't seen before, or that raises the stakes and shows them that they need to be more careful out in the world. As a bit of a rare occurrence here, I'd like to take a second to talk about how to scale this encounter down. The easiest option is to just not use an action-oriented monster. 2 Manticore can be a challenge all on their own for lower level parties. From my direct experience, I ran the action-oriented Manticore as above, by itself, for a party of 4 second or third level characters, and it was tough for them, but they all survived, and my players loved the variety of it. I think it worked so well in that case because there was only one monster for them to worry about. Adding in a second Manticore is going to scale things up for sure because of the action economy alone, and you should be aware of that. Of course, there is no problem with designing an action-oriented monster and then deciding at the last minute to not use any of the stuff you came up with. That's just balancing things on the fly and is a useful skill to have here and to be comfortable with. And with that, there is your roadside Manticore combat using action-oriented design. My hope for this encounter isn't so much that you like it and want to run it, but more that you use it to start thinking about ways to challenge your party that might be a little outside of the box. If you're the DM for a game, you kind of have to think about game design when prepping things, and I say this because I believe it's part of the DM's job to curate interesting situations for the players. You're all going on a road trip together. The DM is the driver and has picked where you'll end up, but the players get to tell you how you all get there. Either way, if you liked this video and if it has you thinking about different ways to challenge your party, then please leave a like. If you ran this encounter and want to tell me how it went, or if you have a particular monster you want to see me cover next, then go ahead and leave a comment below. And if you're not subscribed and want to get notified when the next video goes up, then why not subscribe and do that thing with the bell as well. Thanks for letting me talk at you all, and until next time, keep pondering.